it's a lot to put on a woman's shoulders.
Right.
To be like, if you just did this, if you just supported him, he would thrive, because there are plenty of women who, and I was one of those women who financially also supported that man.
See, that's not
when he didn't have the ability.
Yeah.
And he still didn't live up to anything.
That's not supporting. That not in the way I'm talking about. Not in the way that a man needs. You want to do the opposite of that.
Oh, trust me, I know that was not a good idea.
Well,
but I was young and not very.
I'm just saying, like,
smart.
Beyond the perfect we discover, through our flaws we complete each other. Better than perfect we stay. Through every fault we find our way.
Welcome back to the Better Than Perfect podcast, where every week we share with you how two imperfect people helping each other grow equals one better than perfect relationship.
You got me there for a second. I was like, like, is it? Yeah, he's got it. Yeah, he's got it.
Yeah. So we're back in the studio.
Back.
It feels like it's been a while.
We were back last time.
No, we weren't last week. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
But we didn't record last week. But that's why it feels like a long time. Yeah, we went on a cruise, and
my parents were in town too, which John wanted them to come on the podcast. But my mom said her podcasting days are over.
I think we could have convinced them. Maybe next time.
Yeah, maybe next time.
But then also, what will we talk about? I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's...
Well, I think we're going to do like how dating and stuff has changed since they were dating.
Yeah.
But so leave comments saying that you want my parents to come on the podcast and I'll show them.
Yeah.
Then they can't say no, right? It's kind of like when you were a kid and you were like, go ask my parents if you can stay over to like your friend.
Exactly,
they can't say no if you guys want them to come on.
That's right. We'll
That's
just
my
show
logic.
them the comments and be like, look, see, people want you to.
Yeah, exactly.
You got to do it. So
that might work. But yeah, so what is the topic for today?
Yeah, so I thought we'd do a topic on, I don't know how to exactly, I mean, it's the roles in a relationship or in a marriage, right? Between the man and the woman, like what is ideal for the roles, right? So,
well, should we talk about the ending thing in the beginning since it inspired?
Yeah, I guess so. I guess we'll talk about our
thing
week,
that we faced.
Yeah, what we faced this week. Yeah, so we had a little bit of a discussion this week. And I mean, what it really came down to is kind of why we're doing this episode, which is just talking about the roles of like what is a woman supposed to be doing in their relationship, like what is the man's role, what is, because I think there is a lot of confusion. So we, got into that a little bit but worked it out. I'm trying to think like how to describe. Like I don't even remember
what happened or the roles.
Or what happened. I don't even remember what the beginning.
Well, I was fearful of like conflict arising because of things that happened in the past, and I knew that they weren't happening actively, but I was still afraid that they would happen. And then I brought it up to you in the wrong way. And then we kind of spiraled from there on the crazy cycle. And then you felt like I wasn't really listening to you or empathizing with your side of the whole situation. And then I realized that I wasn't doing it in the right way and that I didn't really... Like, I can understand the concept of doing it, but I never really knew how to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Never really saw it happening.
Yeah.
Never really experienced it, even myself, to the degree that you were explaining until I was with you. So
yeah,
it was just a lot of realizing that I was also shutting myself off to try to protect myself, which then also made you feel like I was distant from you.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, yeah.
So it was just a lot of things, which is how like I've always operated, and it's a defense mechanism and, all of those things. So it was a like long, not as long as
Not
normal.
as long. No, not as long.
But it
yeah.
was a long
Yeah.
conversation, but it was beneficial.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I think we cut through a lot of stuff. It's crazy how, just it's funny because I think 2 nights ago I was like, oh, we get along so well. We have worked out. Like, I think we've reached perfection now. Right?
So you're the one jinxing us.
I jinxed
Even
it, right?
if it's
Remember?
in your head.
Like 2 nights ago. No, I said it like 2 nights ago or something. But the thing is, it is funny how you're still growing and still learning and and working through issues. But it was really helpful to me because there were some things that I was frustrated by that I feel like got resolved it wasn't like it was something that was just I don't know how to describe it, like our relationship is really good almost all the time, right? So but there's always like little things that we have to fix and work on and figure out,
right. And they feel really big because there's not as big of problems, if that makes sense. Like we've talked about this with each other before, but I don't know if we've talked about it on here, that because the vast majority of the time things are so good, when even something little happens, it feels bigger than it is.
Exactly.
And that's not to say we haven't dealt with actual big things. Like we have.
Right.
But it's just that when you have such a close connection and deep intimacy, like the little things you want to bring up and resolve and, not let them grow into bigger things. Yeah. So.
Yeah. And so, so that's, And it's funny because I was talking to one of my coaching clients actually on the relationship coaching, and he was saying, I don't know, like, why I'm getting so like hurt by every little thing. and I was like, it's because you're so close now. Like, because I was working with him and helped him restore the relationship and get it to a point where they're really, really close, more intimate than they had ever been in. So now it is true. Now it's like any little disturbance, you feel it more. You do. Right. So, which
I don't even think that's a bad thing, because then I think it's easier for you not to sweep things under the rug, because even little things bother you enough to talk about it.
Yeah.
So it is a good thing, even though it might feel like he said, like, oh, this sucks, like caring so much about every little thing. But at the same time, that's why the good parts are so good and they feel so good and you're so happy in those moments, is because everything is intensified because you have that deep connection.
Yeah, because what happens if you don't? Like, then I think a lot of people are used to operating in a mode in their relationship where they're just kind of ignoring things. It's just not worth the hassle. It's like, this is just, and that you're not that close. Like, if you're close enough, then you can't, because it's affecting that closeness, right? So if you get into a mode where you're not very close, where you've lost some of that intimacy, you're just used to operating in that mode, and then the things that they do don't affect you as much, because it only really affects you when you are that close, because that thing breaks the closeness and you feel it. So
well, and I'm sure people feel hopeless too in a different situation. They're like, I've brought this up how many times and nothing keeps happening, like changing. So I get to that people kind of start to pick their own battles. But like you said, that's not necessarily the way that it should be. And I understand if one person's trying and the other person's not, or, whatever the situation might be. But like you said, the best way is to talk about all the things, because then you will work through them rather than keeping them inside all bottled up, and then you're going to explode, and then that's going to cause more problems.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was our our thing, that, our end segment, but it kind of led to, and part of the conversation was about the roles, and that's where I came up with this topic as, what is a man supposed to do in their relationship? What is a woman supposed to do? And it's, and we had a good discussion about it, and we can echo some of that here and then hit the man side too, because we were hitting mostly on the woman's side. But, when we first got together, when we first really became a couple, the thing I said to you was, I only need two things from you, which is one, to support me as a man, and two, the sexual, to show me the sexual desire and interest that that motivates me, that gives me confidence in it. Like basically those two things, right? However you want to describe it, that's how I described it at that point. But it's interesting how, I don't know, that I think a lot of people don't understand that. It gets lost. It's not well understood. Like why is that the case, right? Because does that make sense? Or, and again, we have a lot of like 50-50 couples where they're both contributing to the household income, right? But when a man is the sole provider and the protector, then what he needs from a woman is the full support to make him stronger, right? To make him be able to go out and face the world. And so that's what I want to kind of break down, is like how does that look? Why does it exist that way, right? What are the difficulties, in trying to implement that? So,
Well, go ahead.
okay. Well, I mean, I think maybe we can start by talking about what the role is, like what the role is for a man, what the role is for a woman, ideally, right? And I think for a man, the role, and this is something that we talk about a lot on the podcast. I think we talk more about the man role than the woman role, but he needs to be and this is ideal, right? So not everyone can be there at this point, but this is where you should be shooting for, the sole financial provider for the house, right? He's the one who goes out and he interfaces with the world. He faces the world. He makes the money. He takes care of the household, not just his wife, but the family, the children, financially, creates the physical safety for everyone, right? The protector, the emotional safety, for especially for the woman, to make sure that she feels emotionally safe and like she can be delicate and vulnerable. And he provides the leadership, right? The instruction, how are things going to go, the direction, the decisions that need to be made, like setting the course. And really, I would say his role is to shield his wife, or woman. I would say woman because some people have girlfriends and some people have fiancés and so wives. So woman, he shields his wife, his woman, from the outside world, so that she doesn't get all the stress from the outside world. She doesn't have to deal with the financial situations and the complexities of the outside world. He's providing a shield from that to make her life as stress-free as possible. And that's what he's supposed to do. Did I leave anything out, or is that?
I don't think so.
Right. I think that's right. And then on the woman's side, it's more of the support of that, right? So if the man is the head of the household, if he's the outward-facing conqueror who's making the money, then the woman's role in that relationship is to fuel him up. I think I was talking about, it was like a rocket in one of the episodes, where she's the rocket fuel, right? So a man on his own, he can, and that's why a lot of men are like, well, why do I need a woman? Why do I need to get married? He's like, I can make money, I can pay for maid service and clothes, and I can, do all these things. I don't need a woman. If I want to have sex, I can pay for that, or I can, I don't have to marry or commit to a woman. But the answer is because, a man can do those things on his own, but a woman behind him gives him the fuel support to be able to do that mission, whether that be, mostly in the emotional support of making him feel admired, making him feel strong, making him relax, like replenishing his energy so he can go out and face the world and go and fight the battles that need to be fought. And so she's creating that for him in order to give him more energy to be able to do that. And it becomes a multiplier. And so the woman's role is more of the support of that man that is providing the income and the protection in that. And then, of course, obviously the children and the household and taking care of that. But the main job when we look at the relationship, or the main role we look at the relationship, is for her to support him so that he can go out and do the things. Because if he has a good woman behind him supporting him, then he's got that focus, that energy, the confidence to go and conquer the world. So, and I think that the thing that it was, that I think is confusing about it is like, why, right? Because, and that's where that multiplicative effect is, right? Because the man on his own, he can make money, he can take care of his household or whatever, he can take care of himself. A woman on her own, she can do that today. A woman can make money. A woman can get a job. She can be extremely successful. She can run and manage her household, But if you take two and you combine them and put them in the same household, you do get a double effect, right? It's twice, right? He's making money, she's making money. She's taking care of some things in the house, he's taking care of some things, which is fine. But you're not getting any synergistic benefit from that, right? Whereas if you have a man taking the role of being the sole financial provider and responsible, and the woman not doing that role, but instead doing the role of support, and all her energy or majority of her energy is put into supporting him, it's a multiplicative effect. It's synergistic, where now he can do 3, 4, 5, 10 times as much, or be 10 times as effective as he could on his own, or she could on her own. And that's also why, when you look at wealth, right? People who are in the millionaire or multimillionaire status, almost all of them are married. Like a big majority of people that are financially successful are married, and a lot of them are sole income households, because that system works better than just combining things together.
Makes sense.
What are your... I talked a lot.
I mean, I figured you were going to be talking a lot, though, because you talked about it a lot.
Yeah.
Even when we had a conversation. I mean, I feel like it all makes sense. I'm not saying it doesn't make sense. I feel like I do kind of have to go back to the point of women being afraid of men holding things over their head.
Yeah.
And I feel like, especially when they're upset maybe and they are doing all this stuff, they do tend to throw that at a woman, and that pushes her more towards doing things on her own, getting her own stuff, because she's afraid of things being held against her. And I think, though, like in our situation, you don't do that. And so it is easier to support you and be there for you. And even I wasn't doing it to the level that you needed when I felt like I was supporting you. And I have done a lot to do that. But, it's not about what I think I'm doing. It's about what you need and fulfilling those needs so that you can feel better and be able to do the things that you need to do.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, I do think that it can be something that is... Well, I think the thing about holding it against or holding it over someone's head, it comes from a thinking of not truly thinking of it as a team, as one unit. Like we did that episode on oneness, and either person can be guilty of this, right? So, but as a man, if you understand that, look, it's not about her, it's not about I did this, so you need to do this, right? It's about, look, I'm the part of this team that's going out and facing the world. She's the part that's giving me the fuel to be able to do that. If this part of the team's not functioning well, I don't shit on this part of the team. I help this part of the team because that part of the team helps me. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so if you're holding something again over someone's head and being like, well, I did this, so you need to do this, then that's not that, because that's not going to bring that person, get you what you need in order for the team to be, because you're both going to succeed or fail together, right?
Right.
And
Which
I think
I think though in a conversation, especially when people are frustrated, though, that isn't how it goes. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it does go a lot of the time, like you said, it could be a man or a woman with someone being like, I do this, so you need to do this, or something like that. And I guess too, I'm speaking for women, one, because I'm a woman, and two, because of just the history of relationships where women were in situations where they did have to just marry somebody and they had to take whatever treatment they got because they just didn't have any other option really. And I'm not saying that that's how it is now, but I'm saying that I think those times and hearing those stories, kind of like the stories that men hear, make women more afraid of being put in those situations. And I can understand it too, because the next episode we're going to talk more about this.
Yeah.
But it is more dangerous for a woman to be in a situation with a man that might hold things against her, or, you know, in a extreme case, I'm not saying that this is the norm, like be dangerous or, you know, or turn into an abusive husband or something like that. So, and normally someone who holds things against you like that, there is some sort of abuse sort of thing, like not all the time, but like even acting that way is emotionally manipulative. And so I think that's where two women are more hesitant with that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I know this isn't really like exactly what we're talking about.
Well,
but
give me the example of holding it so that we can put it into like, how does a man do this that
like,
abusing this?
I think I did it when we were on vacation too, but you know, a man's like, oh, let's go on this nice vacation. And, you know, I planned all this. And then when you guys get in an argument, he's like, after everything I did for you, I just planned this whole vacation and you're going to be upset at me over this. Like, I did this, so you should be able to do this. Like, it's taking something that he's done and he gifted you and now used it as manipulation for
something.
what? Yes. And like, now you have to do this.
Right. Exactly. Okay.
So, like that, I feel like is what women get afraid of. And like you said, if it's come at the way that you described it and the way that we, you know, kind of went about the things is that we're helping each other. And that's how it should be.
Yeah.
And I feel like and like I said, I guess this is what started the whole tangent, but what women are afraid of is when men get upset that they're going to go straight to, I did this for you, you need to do this for me, rather than, hey, like, I'm not feeling supported, but we're a team. So like, I want you to know that this isn't happening and I have needs that aren't being met.
Right.
Let's talk about it. If there's any way that I can help you figure this out as well too, let's figure it out together.
Right.
But it's like emotions are typically so high by the time resentment has built or things like that. And that's why we were talking about just talk about it right away, that it typically goes the wrong way. Even if you do want to view it as a team, right? Like sometimes you're just so frustrated and so upset that you do say things that you don't
that come across that way
mean to say in that manner. So
that makes a lot of sense. I think it's like, well, like, you know, like I was saying with the team, but it's more like the approach should be more like, I want to be able to make the most money for our house and provide for us and to be able to, you know, to function at my best for us so we can have a better life, so that you can enjoy the things that you like to enjoy. The kids can be taken care of. All of these things can be handled. However, my tank is low. And in order to do that, I need the support to be able to give me the ability to do that to the ability that I want to and that you deserve, you know.
Right.
And that's a better way than saying, you know, than the holding against, because like you said, because if you're giving something and then you think that and now it becomes transactional where it's like now there's actually a cost to it. It's like, oh, it's like, you give someone a free sample and then you're like, so now.
Well, then they're not going to want you to do those things. And now you're creating other problems actually. Because now you're using the things that you do that you're supposedly doing out of the kindness of your own heart to back up your point. And so then it's like, are you just doing it to be able to use this against me later? You know what I mean? And like women can do the same thing to men. I'm not saying that this is a man only thing or whatever, but I think that really also drives a wedge in between the people trying to have the conversation, because then it does feel tit for tat. Then everybody's getting defensive and things like that. And so, because I don't think women have an issue supporting a man that does make it feel like there's a team. Like, I feel like women have an issue supporting men who are like, I do this all day. Like, what are you doing? Like, I do this for you. What are you doing? Like, I understand that, like, at the core, that is the problem. But also, like, a lot of men just blurt out what they feel, right? Like, and so that comes out. And even though they're meaning it to try to work together as a team, it's coming out wrong. You know what I mean? And so she's taking it literally. And then now she feels like you're holding things against her. So now she doesn't want you to take her on vacation. She doesn't want you to do the things that you're throwing back in her face, right? So, like, that's why I understand it's hard to do in the moment, but you do have to try to work together on something as a team. And even if the man is voicing his frustrations like that in the wrong way, a woman can kind of try to turn it around, which I wish I had thought to do this when we were having our conversation. But I guess I did kind of at the end, but by being like, I hear what you're saying. How can I help you do this? Right. And I understand that men aren't going to want to be like this, do this, this, and this. Because then you're like, are you just doing this because I told you to do it? Because women have the same sort of thought process too when they tell men to do things for them. But at the same time, I do feel like it is important for the person who is talking about that their needs aren't being met to do at least give some examples. Because at the end of the day, as a woman, I'm trying my hardest to understand your needs and what you need and what that looks like. But at the end of the day, I'm a woman and still my woman brain kicks in and I'm like, oh, he would want me to bring him a cupcake and that would make him feel so loved and supported. And you might be like, that was nice, but I'd rather you just give me a hug and sit with me on the couch. You know what I mean? So it's like someone can still be really trying to support the person, but still be doing it wrong, but it's not malicious. You know what I mean? So that's why it is important. And even in our conversation, I was like, I need you to at least give me some sort of ideas because I need to know what makes you feel supported the most.
It's kind of like the love languages that we were talking about in the last week where, you know, it's someone else's love language might be different, but
exactly,
because you have to know what, and I think part of that too comes from the confusion, just like I said, with the roles itself, right? Because you know, if a guy's like, well, I work all day, right, and I do all this stuff, so a woman might say, well, is he saying that I need to be working too? Or like, is he saying it's not fair because I'm not working, because I'm not cleaning up the house or whatever? Like, and it's like, or doing all these activities or doing stuff. And for some guys, that is what they mean, which is that's not smart, because that's not what you need as a man, right? You know, it's like you don't need her to make more money or to start her own business or to do that stuff. That's not what's going to help you as much as what you think. You know, a lot of young guys that are, you know, thinking, oh, well, if we had two people making money, then that would, and to a degree it's true, but if you had a woman that's supporting you so that you could make 10 times as much money, that's better, right? And so I think that's where the confusion comes, is that role for a woman is fairly simple. It doesn't have to be all that other stuff. It's not on an equal level. We talked about, I think, in another podcast episode maybe 2 weeks ago about how in a man's world, in a man's mind, it's all about being productive and what are you doing and what are you accomplishing and making money and a lot of men judge women by that, and that's not the standard to judge a woman by. But I think understanding that role, because if you as a woman don't understand that role and what is actually important to support the man, then you're going to think, oh, well, I guess I need to be doing all this other stuff too.
Well,
right?
I think women are confused,
Yeah.
and they do think that because men have made them think that, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
That's also why, too, when a guy says that, she goes straight to, okay, I should get a job then. Or because it also sounds like he's complaining. And a lot of men do complain about women not having a job or making money, or they call them dependents, or, women are seeing all this stuff.
Right.
So it's not like it's coming out of nowhere. And again, she shouldn't base her actual relationship on the things that she's hearing on the internet. But most women have faced those sort of comments. And then they have also realized, okay, well, if I do bring 50-50 to this relationship, I have 50% of the say and he doesn't have 100. And if he's talking to me like this, then I don't want him to have 100. You know what I mean?
Right.
But it is, men are perpetuating women acting this way. They might come for me in the comments with their pitchforks, but it is the truth. And it goes back to a lot of other episodes that we've done, that they need to value femininity.
Right.
They need to value what makes a woman, because even in the conversation we had the other night, and I think this is so important to bring up, you told me that it's okay to be needy.
Exactly. Yeah.
I feel like every woman hears the exact opposite. And you even asked me, and I said a woman shouldn't be needy until she's married in a committed relationship, because that the way you explained it, you're like, it makes me feel closer to you.
Right.
But in the beginning, it actually repels men away. So it is a weird balance, right?
Yeah.
And so when you asked me that, I'm like, it's hard for women to go from don't be needy. And especially men are also telling women, don't be needy.
Right.
But then you're like, be needy.
Okay.
And I'm like,
I got the answer for you. All right. So if I as a man, well, and there's two pieces to it, because we did talk about the needy, but the pretending like you're not needy, right? So that repulses. Maybe we'll start with that one. So the first one is, and we talked about this, is that when you're needy, but then you're acting like you're not, or that you don't need, it's a weird thing, but people do it, right?
Well, you can tell the difference between
when it's
people who are really needy and are trying to act cool about it,
exactly.
not needy.
That's repulsive, because it's like, I want you to help me out or to be with me, but I don't want to drop the pride to admit that I want that.
Right.
And that's repulsive, right? That's what that neediness is, repulsive, right? But I think the real answer comes down to this. If I as a man have stepped up and said, I take I was going to say ownership, but I take accountability for you as a human. Like you're my wife, or you're my girlfriend, or whatever it is. But I am going to protect and provide for you, like you're under my wing, right? Then being needy is great, because that's what you want as a man. If you are in that role, and if a person is under your protection, for them to come to you and be like, I need your protection, please help me, like I want you, like I appreciate you, like, to say I'm scared, I need you to help me out, that makes you feel good. That makes you feel, men, the key thing to men's psychology is men need to feel useful, right? It makes them feel useful. But if that's not the case, which is like before you get married or wherever, take the relationship to that level, then the neediness doesn't quite hit. Then it's more of a like a red flag type of issue.
Well, there's another problem.
Okay.
Because going back to what we talked about too, So if you're needy and you ask a man to help with things
Right.
and then he holds them against you, that's also why women don't want to be needy, and that's also what they're afraid of. So I'm just trying to
I see what you're saying,
paint the full picture here, because it's not black and white in a woman's mind. It's actually like every color that you could ever imagine, because you feel like, especially as a woman, you feel like you have to make sure you're not making a choice that might be dangerous. You know what I mean?
How so?
Like that you pick the right man
Oh, yeah,
to be
of
with.
course. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So it's like, we do sometimes get mixed signals, and I know men get mixed signals from women too. I'm not saying that that's not the case, but there have been times where people will be needy,
Right.
and then the things that they asked for are thrown back in their face. So it's like, how do you navigate that as a woman? How do you be needy and vulnerable? And I know you have to just do it, is probably what you're just going to tell me. But as a woman, though, it does hurt and makes you want to go back to how you were and be more masculine when you are vulnerable and someone takes the things you asked them for when they told you to ask for things and then uses them against you. Does that make sense? Because I think when we had the whole episode about vulnerability, there's a different vulnerability to own up to something.
Yeah.
But it's also different to have your vulnerability weaponized. And that's what that is. And so that instance, I feel like would make women want to be less vulnerable.
Yeah.
But like we mentioned, that there is invulnerability to being vulnerable. But the thing is, any person in general, if someone was like, be needy, tell me what you need and I'll do it for you. And then everything was like held against them, they would not do that anymore. And that's essentially what men have done to women, right?
I think
like the men that haven't healed themselves.
Right. Well, okay. I think that there's an over caution or worry about this. So, and I think that comes from on what we're saying is being needy, quote needy, right? So just asking for things, right, can be the repulsive kind of needy.
Like what kind of things? Like, help me open this jar.
Well, that's probably not good, but it could be. It could be the repulsive kind of needy if you're asking for that, but you're not giving the credit of, you're a big, strong man and I can't do this myself and I need your help, right? Okay. That is not going to be held against you. It's not going to be be looked at.
Some guys still could. They get pissed and they'll be like, you can't even open a jar.
It's
don't act like guys wouldn't say something like that.
I know, but in general, it's not like it's an actual vulnerability, right? But if it's like, can you open this jar for me? And
I just don't feel like it, but I could.
Right. Then it's like, no, you have to acknowledge, like as a woman, you have to acknowledge, right? You have to acknowledge your man and be like, you're bigger than me, you're stronger than me, you can work harder than me, like you do this stuff. Like a man has to feel like a woman actually is needy to him, is vulnerable to him because she needs him, not because she's just needy, right? And that's the difference. And when you come in that way, then it's instinctual. I've been coaching guys for a long time, not just in the relationship coaching, and relationship stuff comes up all the time. And I can tell you so many times where I talk to guys and it's like, if a woman just understood that if she, instead of getting mad or however she's dealing with the situation, if she just broke down and cried or was like, just like, oh, I don't want to lose you. I love you so much, or if she took that approach of what you would call needy, of seeming clingy or seeming weak or pathetic, as some people would say, like if she took that approach, a man instantly melts, and he feels like he has to take care of her and comfort her and make her feel better and protect her and forget what I was upset about. You're more important, right? Women have that secret power, and they don't realize they have that power, right? Because I think
No,
a
I
lot
think
of it is
they
that
do.
fear.
I think
Yeah.
most women who use it, though, are manipulative.
Yeah, okay, well,
Like, I'm
yeah,
not saying,
yeah.
I want to be clear. I'm not saying
Yeah.
that what you're saying is the wrong thing to do. It's the right thing to do.
Right.
But I think that a good majority of women who use that,
Right. They
because
know.
I can think of stories that I've heard
Right.
and that seem very believable that certain women would do
Right.
exactly what you say after they've blown up and said things and yelled and
Oh, sure. Yeah.
all of those
Yeah.
things and then gone to that. Because
Right.
I think that a lot of time women use that to try to make up for all the horrible things that they did.
Right. And I agree. But that's why that has to be you can't use it for bad, right? Any of these things you could be used for manipulation. You shouldn't. You should
Right.
use them for good, which means you go there first. You go to that place. You act that way. That's the being feminine part, right? That a lot of women are afraid to show. But again, that is part of that role of the support. Because, when you come to me and you're like, John, I like, and you're like, I'm struggling with this, or and you're just like coming to hug me or to like get me to hug you because you need that comfort or support from me or whatever the issue is. Or I'm scared about this. I feel like this, I'm going to respond like that. That not only am I going to respond, but it also makes me feel more useful, better, more confident as a man. I guess it empowers me because I know that I have you trusting and coming to me. You know what I mean? It's hard to describe, I think, but I think
No,
you
I
get
know
I'm
what you're saying.
right?
And but I still think that I would say a woman's biggest fear in doing that is it being held against her, because I've even had women do that to me, right? Like I've had a friend, we, dissolved a friendship and
Yeah.
then she would throw back all the things that I confided in her
Yeah.
to hurt me. And so, like, I feel like that is what makes women afraid to appear needy or to be like, I need you. Like, tell, like,
Yeah.
I know so many women personally that don't even want to ask for help.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they're afraid of many things. But I think the biggest thing is it being held against them. And so they'd rather just do it themselves.
Yeah.
And that's also what's caused women, I think, in general, to be more independent, is because they don't want, you can go on any of our videos probably and see men even holding the things that I'm saying against me, and they don't even know me, and they didn't watch the full episode. They're just watching this clip.
Well, look, here's how I got it. Yeah, because I deal with this a lot with a lot of people, not just in relationship, in romantic relationships, but the holding it against it. It's like, look, no one can hold something against you. They can think that they can hold something against you, but you know what? If I go to whatever. If I give you something, right? If I give someone, let's say this example. Let's say that you're walking down the street, right?
Mm-hmm.
And someone is like, "Hey, would you like a free sample of this candy or whatever it is, or like, would you like this candy?" Maybe they don't say the word free, right? And you're like, "Sure," and they give it to you, and you eat it, and then they're like, "Okay, here's the bill. It's $10,000." They're trying to hold it. What are you going to do? You're going to laugh at that bill. You're like, no, you just gave me. I don't owe you anything for it. You didn't say, hey, this is what this costs. Do you want this? You gave it to me. Right. So it's like, if you have that mindset, I know it's still difficult, but in reality, no one can ever really hold anything against you.
I agree with what you're saying, and you're right. But I do feel like it is different when it's the person you're spending your life with. Yeah. And now they're bringing up all the things that they did for you to hold them against you, to prove their point or to make you see something. Like, it it hurts more. Like, it's easier to do what you said.
Right.
Like, I don't think women necessarily have as much of a problem. They still might a little bit, but I think it's more so the people you care about and the people closest to you doing that to you because, one, you're afraid that they're going to continue to do it.
Right.
And two, now you feel like, are they just doing things so they have an arsenal to hold against me when they're upset? Like, it invokes a lot more than the example that you gave. So yes, you're right that nobody can hold something against you.
Right.
They can't. But at the same time, I don't know if that would also, like, having that knowledge would resolve the problem.
Okay, let me give you an example. Because sometimes I think you can feel like it's being held against you, but that's not what the objective is. Sometimes the objective is just to get the recognition or acknowledgement or appreciation, right? So, for instance, like we were talking about in our discussion, I had said, well, you know, I wake up at 5:40 in the morning and then I bring you coffee in the morning. And at first you said, well, you don't have to do that. Don't bring me coffee anymore. And my reaction was, no, it's so much better if you say, oh, wow, you do that. I like that a lot. That's great. I appreciate that, right? Because that's what I was really going for. Not to hold it against you, to be like, okay, so since I bring you coffee, what are you going to do for me? Or like, you know, but more to say, this is how much I love you. This is how much I care for you. I want to be acknowledged for that. Like, I want to feel like, you know, because I think that the thing about that, the danger of it, and the reason why I bring this up is because, yes, someone can hold things against you, but also if you're in the mind frame of worrying about everything being held against you, then you're not going to appreciate the things that are given to you or done for you, because you're constantly worrying that if I accept this gift, or if I'm thankful for this, if I, you know, want this thing that's being given to me, then am I going to feel obligated in some way or not?
Well, a lot of people, that's how they operate. And they don't want help from people because they don't want to feel like they owe somebody something.
Right. But that's, and when you're dealing with the external world, I generally agree, right? I always say, never let anyone put their hooks in you, right? So don't accept charity, don't accept gifts from people, because you don't want you don't want to owe someone something, right? However, when you're in a relationship with someone, you have to cut those barriers down, because it's not going to be healthy. It's not going to help you to be worrying about, you know, you just have to accept, you know, graciously, I think is the key. And again, I think it is more of a feminine issue that, you know, women, even compliments, women a lot of times have a hard time accepting but, you know, part of being feminine is accepting those compliments graciously, being thankful for them, being thankful for the things that, you know, because a man is, you know, if you think about it really, and again, I'm talking about the ideal, well, I think it's in the heart of all men, right? So a lot of men don't even tap into their own heart and understand this, but a man in a relationship with a woman, especially married, right? The biggest thing that will bring him joy or happiness in his life is for her to be happy. That's like, if he can make her life better, if you know, if I can have on my eulogy or whatever, it's just like, you know, he made he made Nicole the most happy, you know, made her life as best as it possibly could be, you know, whatever, like those praises, those would be my highest accomplishment as a man. You know what I'm saying? Those are things that are most meaningful to me. And so that's why I think that sometimes it's misunderstood. If women understand this about a man's heart, then they see all these things that he's doing and giving them as those are real. That's what is really important to him. It's not so that he can use it later.
Right.
You know what I mean?
But I do think it is confusing, because like even the example where you wake up early and you bring me coffee, right? Like, I get that you were trying to prove a point, and I understand your perspective of it, and that, you know, you didn't feel like I gave you the appreciation that you would like to feel. But also, I was like, I wake up and I give you a kiss and a hug every morning. And then you're like, oh, yeah, you do that. And so like, I feel like just using those examples sometimes, they're not beneficial in the way that you think they are. And even at the end of our conversation, I told you to like tell me one way that I support you that you liked, and then tell me, but I would like support in other ways, or I'm not feeling fully supported though.
Right.
And I feel like that is very needed when a man is talking to how he wants to be supported by his woman, because it doesn't look the same for everybody. Like in some degrees, yes, like, but it's also confusing because I do thank you when you bring me coffee, and I feel like, okay, maybe that's enough, but it wasn't enough. You know what I mean? And so that's fine. And you're valid for feeling that. But I also need to know what like more would you want? And it doesn't have to be like in that exact instance, but it needs to be clarified because it is confusing. And like I said, it's not the same for everybody. Like you said with the love languages thing, it's like, how do you feel best supported? And there are things that a woman can do that is universal, like showing her appreciation by saying thank you every time, or, you know, if that's not enough, then, you know, making him coffee sometimes. Or there are things, like, I'm not saying that there aren't ways to come up with things, but I feel like you do have to, especially if you're expressing that your needs aren't being met, you can't just be like, well, you figure it out. And I get why you want to say that, because you want it to be genuine. But at the same time, if you're a team, you want to be working together, right? Like, just like you're working to provide for the family and you want her to join in on that by supporting you, it's a team effort.
Right.
And so, and even if it's like a woman's needs aren't being met, she has to bring it to her husband in a way that's like, I appreciate you doing this for me, but I'm lacking this or something.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it still has to be done in the right way, because it is a confusing thing, right? And even though it's about the person talking, and our situation was complicated because you asked me what was wrong and I started saying things, and then none of that got resolved, and then this new thing came up, right? And I've already talked about that. That's hard for me to, especially hard for me to empathize when I still have these problems, and now they feel even more pushed under the rug. And so now I'm supposed to sit and listen to someone talk about something when my feelings got discarded. But needless to say with that, like, each person is valid in what they feel.
Right.
But at the same time, I do feel like you're responsible for how you express it and what is the best way. And I didn't do it the best way when I brought you my issues, and I acknowledge that. But after having the conversation, I know that how important that is, and how important it is to be vulnerable and come from that place, and that it's okay to appear needy and things like that. But at the same time, I do feel like it is important to try to pay attention as much as you can to what you're saying and how you're approaching your partner, because those things do matter. Especially, like I said, to a woman, she doesn't want to feel like, you know, these things are being held against her, and like, should I ask him to not bring me coffee anymore? Like, because is he gonna say, like, and I'm not saying say that in the moment. But even after that, though, it does make a woman feel like, is he bothered by this thing, or
no?
What?
Never. He's never bothered by it. That's the answer. That's what I'm trying to get at, is that the answer is no. He's never bothered by it. He's doing things for you because he wants to do them for you, and he just wants to be acknowledged for it. He doesn't even need more thank yous. He just wants you in the moment to acknowledge it. That's the thing, is to say, oh, I love when you do that. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. It also is the counter to feeling like someone. So for example, even if we use that example where I said, oh, if someone gives you some candy and then hands you a bill, you know, when they hand you the bill, you could say, oh, wow, I thank you for giving me that candy. I really like the candy. Right? It's like they don't have anything to say to that. Like your acknowledgement of it. It's like, if you're like, oh, let me give you back the candy. It was a gift, right? And if you acknowledge a gift, then you take away the obligation part of it. It's just I think when gifts are not acknowledged, that's when someone feels like now they're owed something, because it's like, I did this for you out of the kindness of my heart. If you're treating it transactionally, then now I feel like it's transactional. Whereas, because the answer is always, right? And it's hard to accept. But if a man is doing something for you, he wants to. He enjoys doing it. We love to serve. We love to serve our wives, to serve our
Good
women.
men do.
Well, let's only talk about, I mean, in every man's heart of hearts, though, that is the truth. Like, because this is how men are built, right? Masculine wants to support, wants to provide, wants to, and so that's what it really comes down to. So the answer is never to be like, oh, you don't have to do that for me. Probably the worst thing that you could ever say to a man, one of the worst things is, oh, don't do that for me, or you don't have to do that for me, or I didn't ask you to do that for me. Those are like daggers in the heart, because as a man, I get my sense of self, like in a relationship, sense of worth and so for how much I'm providing for the people that depend on me. And when a person says, oh, I don't need you to do that for me, or you shouldn't have done that, or I didn't ask you to do that, it's like, you don't matter. Like all your efforts are worthless. Like I don't care about your efforts, because that's so that's kind of the thing behind it, is that it's just important to realize that you don't have, like, every gift that a man ever gives you in a relationship, he wants to give it to you, and there's no.
I mean, I understand. I feel like, though, it is confusing when people use examples, though, and it does make it confusing. That's why I think that it does matter, and that the better thing would probably be to just talk about what you're lacking, and that you need more support or you need more desire, rather than using examples to try to make somebody like understand, because it can be confusing. And I understand what you just said, that it feels hurtful when you did something nice for somebody and then they're like, well, don't do that, or I didn't ask you to do it. Right. I understand that. But I also see where if like the tables were turned and I was like, well, I do all this for you, I do all this for you, you would understand where I'm coming from, but you'd also probably be like, does she want to do these things, or are they just like, like, it's just, I don't feel like it's a good way for anybody to prove their point, because what the actual point is that you're not feeling supported. Well,
I think the point can be, this is how much I love you.
Yeah, but I think that you can express that in a way that isn't all of these tasks that you did.
I mean, it can be demonstrated by the things that you do, like in the things that I think that's still valid. Like, why wouldn't you?
I disagree. I will agree to disagree, but I think it's just, it puts somebody in a confusing position, is what I'm saying.
Not if you have to point something out, because it's, it needs to be understood. I think that, there are times where that's important, right? Because
I mean, I just feel like I'm able to convey to you without, the only time I feel like I bring stuff up is if I'm in a defensive mode. But whenever I'm talking about something that's bothering me with you, I don't feel like I need to bring things up like that, because I personally don't think it's beneficial. I think it's more beneficial to talk about the underlying need and what is lacking, rather than talk about all the things that I've already done to try to prove something, if that makes sense.
Well, I mean, I think that it is important to say what has happened, because a lot of things are not seen, are not acknowledged, right? And I think that it's perfectly valid to say, like, for example, a lot of women are in the opposite position where, hey, they work a job, they cook, they clean, they take care of the kids, they're doing all the stuff. The guy, he's working a job, but then he's watching TV or playing video games, right? So it's perfectly valid for a woman in that circumstance to go to the guy and say, hey, look, I am working a job just like you. I am cooking. I do your laundry. I take care of the kids. I do all this stuff, right? This is how I'm showing up and showing that I care about you and I love you in this relationship. And so like I would appreciate some acknowledgement for those things.
I
right?
hear what you're saying. I literally feel like no man ever has an epiphany when a woman says that stuff, to be honest. And that's what I'm trying to say. It just makes a man and whoever is in that situation defensive. That's the point I'm trying to make. Because everything you just said,
Right.
I know exactly how that would play out if I was in a room with people talking like that. And the man would be like, I go to work every day and I take out the trash and I do this. It doesn't turn into, oh, wow, she does. It should. I'm not saying that you're wrong, that it should make a man be like, oh, she is doing all this stuff. I really appreciate that. But that isn't how it normally turns out. It normally becomes the time that now he's going to talk about all the things that he does. That's what I'm trying to say, is that it's not wrong.
Well,
I'm not saying it's
but
wrong.
That's the roles. That's where the roles come in, right? Is because, see, a man does all of these things to support the family. He goes to work. Maybe he wakes up early in the morning. He does all these things. A woman can't compare herself to those things, right? And the man shouldn't be trying to compare a woman to those things, right? It's what he puts in. It's what she puts in. Right, he puts in the protection, the providing, that the protecting from the stress, handling the stresses of the world. She puts in the nurturing and the support,
right? Which is why I think that the conversation would be better not to be handled that way, because then it does feel like you're competing with each other. You know what I mean? And instead, she should be like, you know, if she's doing all the stuff or whatever, talk about how if, you know, she felt like he handled some of the other stuff that wouldn't be as much of a toll on her, because then she could focus on supporting him and being there for him, because she wouldn't have all this stuff that he doesn't appreciate or whatever, like that he's not seeing, rather than her listing out all the things and being like, see, why I do all this stuff, why don't you appreciate me, or why aren't you, you know, that's what I'm trying to say, is that I understand where spelling it out, you would make people realize what they're not seeing.
Right.
But normally doing that way just makes people defensive. And instead, if you come at it like from a way, I'm going to go back to like our thing because it's easier to give example, but where if you were like, I'm not feeling fully supported. I feel like there are some things that I do that you don't pay as much attention to. You don't have to say them, but you can say that, you know what I mean? Like, because the second you bring out the laundry list, that makes a person want to be defensive. And that person has to work really hard to not be defensive towards that. And like, maybe they can do that. They're very emotionally evolved if they can. But I think it's better to go about it in a way that I like just mentioned, where you're talking about the needs specifically. You can say something along the lines of, I feel like there are things that I've been doing that aren't being noticed, and so I'm not feeling supported or I'm not feeling desired in this way, and I want to bring it to your attention. If you need certain examples, because maybe she'll say, well, what are you doing? And then you can, you know, say the things. But I feel like if you're just starting the conversation and you're like, I do this, this, and this for you, and what are you doing? All I ask for is support. Like, that just feels like an attack on the other person rather than working together as a team.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I see that perspective. That makes sense. Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying that it's wrong to like have things that you know are being unappreciative, but I just don't think it's beneficial to the cause of fixing the problem to lay them all out like that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's only in the case where there's an imbalance or you feel like the things aren't appreciated, then I think they do have to be called out. But otherwise, I would agree, you know, because otherwise, how will a person know? How will they, you know, if a person doesn't understand, like I said, with the woman's perspective of a woman doing all of this stuff and, you know, doing the job and doing the household, which again, we're talking about the opposite of that because that's not the role, right, that we're recommending. If that's not pointed out, that won't, like, so many men are oblivious to it. That's why, you know, so many of the men that I've worked with have ended up on the bad end of a divorce, because that never was pointed out to them. It should have been. Now, I'm not saying that they would have handled it correctly, but it should have been pretty. They're like, why did this happen? And I'm like, well, let's see. Let's look at this, right? It's like you were working a job, and that's all you were doing, and she was doing everything else. Like you had friends, and you hung out, and you did all the kind of stuff that you would do in your normal life, and her life wasn't good because she was picking up all the slack for you, and that's why it happened. But had there been an intervention, had there been that communicated very clearly that, hey, this is not a fair deal, I think it has a chance for fixing things. But if that's not communicated, it doesn't have a chance. So
yeah, it's just hard for me to picture the part that you're talking about, because I don't feel like any man would acknowledge what a woman's doing. I feel like they would just try to compare.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not saying any man. I did say
Right.
any man, but I'm saying that literally a majority of the men that have been in that conversation
Right.
do not respond with, "Oh yeah, you are doing so much, honey. Let me do the dishes tonight," or something like that. They should be.
Right.
Because that's what a man's expecting from his wife when
Right.
she, it should be the same thing.
Right.
But it's normally not met with that. But I understand what you're saying is that, that's how everybody should be responding,
Right.
is caring about what your partner's saying. But that's also why I was trying to explain that.
Yeah.
It makes people more defensive to be
yeah.
like, I did this for you. And I
Yeah.
do this every day.
Yeah,
and I do this.
It has to be worded the right way, I think. But I think also in this situation, in that situation I was talking about, if the guy's already playing video games and and his wife's doing all the other stuff, he's probably already the kind of guy that's not going to be receptive. In a healthy, functioning relationship,
and she's probably got resentment built
right.
up.
Well,
and
the other thing too is I think the important part of it, I think that makes a difference too between men and women, is that a man, he takes pride in everything that he does and provides and does for his family, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so a man does want to call that out and say, these are the things that I am doing. This is like, a man wants to say, hey, I wake up early in the morning and get acknowledgement for those things. Whereas it's not as much I'm not saying that women don't care about that, but they don't. It's not something that they take pride in how hard they work, right? In general, right? In a family situation, and in other ways, they take pride in that. But that's not. It doesn't define their value. For a man in a relationship, it defines his value. Like it's like if that's not appreciated or acknowledged or known, then he doesn't really why, because that's why he's doing all that stuff, is because he loves the people that he's providing for, right? And so that's why he does the things that he does every day, in a good, with a good man, I guess you could say, but
right.
Yeah, but all right, I think that's anything else on the roles?
I don't think so. I mean, was there anything that you wanted to add to what we talked about?
I mean, just the final thing, which is because we kind of went all over the place, but is that the key is that the synergy is when you have both of those things operating. When the man is able to be as unburdened by the things that would stop him from being as effective as possible at his job. And
what's that look like?
It depends. It depends, right? Because, I use the example when we were talking about, if you're a lumberjack or whatever, and you're not making very much money, and, you would be in a double income household, then maybe it is helpful. Maybe the thing that supports him to be able to have the energy to go out there and do that is for his wife to wake up early in the morning and make him breakfast and pack his lunch for him, and help get his clothes ready for him so that he's ready to go and he can go and jump into work and get that stuff done, right? So for him, that's the support, and then obviously the appreciation of it. But, for example, for a guy like me, it's not really, if you make my breakfast or my lunch, it's not, those aren't the things that I'm dealing in the mental world, right? Of stresses and all these things. Like for me, the support is more admiration, which I think is universal, but the appreciation, the, you know, handling my needs, like to be relaxed and to feel, you know, appreciated and loved and sexual and all those things that make it so that I can function at my full capacity.
So I have a question. So should the woman be verbally appreciated for the support and things that she's doing?
Yeah, it should be acknowledged as well, right? Because if someone's doing something for you that makes you feel acknowledged, like the acknowledgement should be acknowledged, right? I'm not gonna be like, thank you for acknowledging that you acknowledge me.
We talked about this.
Yeah.
I think though that men would benefit from doing more of that as well too, because like I said, it helps a woman understand how best to support you. And I said this in our own conversation. I'm like, if I do something that you like and you respond, just like yesterday, I left you like a note and you were like, I really like that. So I'm like, okay, that's not that I didn't already know that, but you know, I do think you need to say
it's encouragement.
Right. Like men need to also say what they like, or, you know, if your wife does something like I mentioned earlier, like brings you a cupcake, you could be like, hey, I appreciate that. But I think you thought that would, you know, be something that I enjoyed a lot, but I would prefer maybe like to spend time with you rather than get a cupcake when you come home or something, you know, like helping her also support you, because it is hard trying to feel like you have to read somebody's mind, you know, and like you said, there are universal ones that are go-tos, but also if you're doing those, like it's helpful to figure out what other ways to support them that they like, because I'm sure there are not women out here who aren't saying thank you and who aren't, you know, acting that way, but it can still not be enough. Like I know that I've showed you appreciation, but it's obviously not enough. So that's why I wanted to know what makes you feel best supported and appreciated. You know what I mean? And so that's very important that you have open communication. And I'm not saying make them a list of everything that makes you feel supported or appreciated, but give them some examples or give them positive reinforcement, because that will help them continue to support you and be there for you in the way that you need. And vice versa.
And I think, I mean, like to help with that, right? Like obviously examples and the encouragement is useful, but I think that if you're thinking about it in terms of the team of, like I said, of it's like, you know, if you're like, as a woman, if you're thinking, all right, this man is my ticket to, you know, to a good future, right? To financial success. Like, I don't have control over that dial because, you know, because a lot of women are worried. They're like, my man's not ambitious enough. He doesn't make enough money. He doesn't, right? I know this is not a thing that you're worried about, but a lot of women are, right? A lot of women, that's their thing. It's like, he's not, like, how can I get him to be like other men who actually go out and get things done? But
I don't think a woman has control over that, because I was with a man who was like that. And you're right, nothing, I don't like, and I did support him and it did not help. And like that is tricky, because sometimes you're right that a woman can help him thrive with the right support. I know you're going there, and I do believe that. But also sometimes you can't. And it's a lot to put on a woman's shoulders to be like, if you just did this, if you just supported him, he would thrive, because there are plenty of women who, and I was one of those women who financially also supported that man.
See, that's not
when he didn't have the ability, and he still didn't live up to anything.
That's not supporting. That not in the way I'm talking about. Not in the way that a man needs. But again, you can't make a stubborn mule. You can bring a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. But what you can do is, like, when you're thinking about how can I support a man, right? As a woman, you can think about, okay, here's my man, here's what he does, here's his work. Like, how can I make it him feel like he can accomplish more or do more. You can think about what are the things that would light him up that he would like. What can I wear? What can I, what kind of things are going to make him feel more like a man so that he can go out and conquer the world? And so those are the ways that you can, because you got to think about it too. It's like, again, in the situation where we're talking about the ideal roles, if a man's working, 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, how many hours a day, right? And he's doing all of these things and tackling all this stuff, then what are you doing as a woman? A lot of women's answer is, well, I'm doing laundry and cleaning the house and cooking and taking care of the kids. And that's fine if that is the case, but that's not really the thing that, like, those are also necessary things, which he can do some of those things. That's not, but the question is, what are you doing with your time? Are you thinking about how you can make this man go further in his career, make this man be more successful so that you can be successful together? And that's like, when you start thinking about those things, then you have the answer of what you can do to support him.
I mean, I agree, but I feel like it is kind of confusing for women. And that's what I've been trying to
we're trying to
play
make
the woman's side. Well, but I think that even what you just said is confusing, because like, even the thing we just said, like, I supported him financially because I thought that was supporting him.
Right.
And you're like, no, that's wrong. And so like, and then also, like, I've tried on things before that, like, you don't necessarily like, and I think look cute on me. And so it is something that a woman is, like, overthinking. Like, you make it sound so easy.
Okay.
You're like,
right.
Put something on that will make him feel like a man. And you're like, oh, I look cute. And then you go in and you're like, the guy might be like, yeah, that looks nice. And then you're like,
Okay.
and so I'm not saying,
Right.
I get what you're saying. And I'm not saying you have to, again, give a list.
Okay.
But that's why I'm trying to say, if you give a little bit, you will help her, right? Just like...
Yeah, I got it. Okay. If you financially support a man, okay, it's like enabling. It's the opposite of support. It's so you want to do the opposite of that.
Oh, trust me, I know that was not a good idea,
well, yeah,
but
no,
I was young and not very
I'm just saying, like,
smart.
Make him do stuff for you. That's also how you make a man feel desired. Ask him to do stuff for you, to you. You see what I'm saying? Don't do stuff to him. Make him do stuff to you. See,
that's where women get it confused too.
Right?
But that's why they need a little bit of help.
Don't give him money. Ask him for money. You want to support a man? Ask him for money. I know that sounds really weird that I'm saying this right now. But look, if a young man is dating a girl and she's like, I really, really want this house, or I really want this house that has a fireplace in the bathtub, right? You're like, man, I got to get my woman this house. I got to bust some out. Maybe I'm going to work some overtime this weekend. Like, I got to get her that thing that she wants. Again, I'm not saying to misuse this or abuse this in order to be a gold digger to just extract resources from a man. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that the way you support a man is probably, I'm glad you said this, and I know we're running a lot over, but it's worth it because after this whole episode, we finally got to the actual meat of it, which is that the way that you support a man is the opposite of what you think. It's to be needy. It's to ask him for stuff. It's to make him step up because you want something from him. It's to not only accept his gifts, but ask for his gifts. But what if you
want him to propose? I'm just kidding.
Well, let's no.
I'm not going to spiral, but
yeah, that one has to be his own thing. That one doesn't count. That's not it. But you can talk about that. But instead of asking him to propose, right? Mm-hmm. You can say, oh, I really would love to have a nice house someday and some kids and for us to be able to go on vacation.
Sometimes
to
they already
Branson,
have a house
Missouri.
and kids to Branson, Missouri.
To stay at the Woodland Lodge.
You're like, I know an Airbnb.
But you know what I'm saying is like that. But I don't want to get from the point, but the main point is this.
That was a joke question,
but the main point is this, because it is, I just realized a light bulb moment, women are confused about it, is that it's the opposite of what you think. Like the way that you support a man is by having him work more.
But that's why it helps her to get some examples, because then she can get in the mindset of it being the opposite. You know what I mean? Like, because otherwise even though you just said it's the opposite, she's still trying to figure it out. And so that's why I think it's best for anybody to be like, hey, I really liked it when you
Right.
Came downstairs and kissed me when I walked through the door.
Yeah, that of course the
But
encouragement.
I need, that was really nice. But I feel like I haven't been supported in some other areas lately. And so then she's like, okay, so he likes it when I give him physical affection, or he likes it when I kiss him, or, now maybe I'll put my arm on his or touch his arm or something,
Yeah, but it's also romantic if you come up with it on your own.
Right. I'm not saying don't come up with any on your own, but I'm saying you just told women it's opposite.
Right.
And they're all sitting here
I
who's
know.
actually watching like, what the fuck does that mean?
We need like a whole nother episode. But what I was going to say about, when I started bringing you coffee in the morning since we moved here, you know when it was? It was about a week after you had casually mentioned and said, oh, I remember when we lived at the old place and we used to both get up to go for work and you'd make me coffee.
Oh.
And I heard that. And then ever since then, I've been doing it every single day, right? Because I want to please you. Because I want you to be happy. Because I want to provide for you. I want to do things for you. You see? And so that's why.
Besides the one time you put lemonade in my coffee.
Well, yes, by accident.
That's funny.
But you see what I'm saying? That's why it is the opposite. Like supporting a man is making him feel useful and acknowledging his usefulness and making, that part of it. And of course the sexual part of it too. But again, like I said, the sexual part of it too is not, it's not. I mean, it's great. I mean, guys like to have things done to them. I'm not, we're not going to make this graphic, but it's more you asking him to do stuff to you, right? Or to, like you show a desire by wanting him, not wanting to show him affection, by wanting affection from him. Even the same thing with the neediness, right? Mm-hmm. If you show affection to a man by hugging him, it's way more effective if you say, can you hug me? That shows
now
more.
You've just literally blown my mind.
That shows more affection. That shows more affection. By saying, can you hug me? Can you hold me?
So just ask for everything. Mm-hmm. And then be appreciative. Okay. Well, I don't know if any other women watching this are like...
They made it this far.
Mind blown.
But that's
if you're a woman and you didn't know this, put the mind blown emoji in the comments because my mind is blown.
So you gave me the light bulb because I realized it is actually the opposite of what.
But that's also why they need a little bit of help, because even what you just said, I would never have thought, even though you just said do the opposite, I would have never have thought it would mean more to you for me to be like, can you hug me, than just hugging you.
Oh yeah. I think if you survey 9 out of 10 men, we'll have to ask.
You're looking at Rodrigo.
We'll have to ask Rodrigo after that. Well, what do you think, Rodrigo? Do you agree?
Yeah, being asked to, for sure.
Right?
What?
Like 100%, or are you just saying it?
I'd say probably, I don't know, 80%.
80%. Okay.
I mean, that's still a majority.
Yeah. I mean, it feels good to get a hug, but it feels better to ask someone to hug you as a man, like for a woman to ask you to hug her.
Okay.
That's see, men like to give. Men are givers. It's so weird because so many men are opposed to it today, and they think they don't want to, because you know why men don't want to be givers today? I'll tell you why. Why men want to be 50-50 men is because they feel like women don't appreciate it, that they don't ask, that they're not asked, that men give without being asked, and then women are like, I don't want that, or I don't need that, I can do it myself.
Stop calling women needy. That's first thing you need to stop doing.
Yeah. But
those men.
But men are givers. That is really what makes a man feel valuable. He wants to give. So when you ask,
my mind is blown.
When you say, I want something from you, I need something from you, men need to feel useful. It makes them feel useful. So there you go.
Well, you heard it here, folks.
All right. I guess
this is a long one.
Yeah. All right. Leave us a review on iTunes. We haven't gotten any in a while. It's still the last one.
Banana
fingers. So go on. You got to be better than banana fingers. I mean, banana fingers is good. We appreciate you, but let's step it up here. All right. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Take care.